Order. Chris Farfoy.
Does she stand by all the statements she made to the Law and Order Committee yesterday?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Supplementary question.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Speaker, why did she yesterday tell the Select Committee no less than 4 times that Budget 2012 did not represent a cut in real terms to police operational funding when patently it does?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Because it didn't. The police received a similar budget to the previous year other than carryovers, and that is the same amount of money.
The Honourable Phil Goff.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. When the police told the Select Committee that inflation was likely to push up their costs by $24 million this year, and the police operational funding only goes up by $8.891 million, does that not represent in real terms, that is taking inflation into account, a cut of over $15 million this year?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, because this government lives in the real world, where we are in the middle of a global world recession. And police, as I said yesterday...
Point of order, the Honourable Phil Goff. Order.
It's apparent to me that in the Minister's answer so far she is not addressing a very straightforward and clear question.
Order. I think the member has asked a very straight question. I think the answer should address the question rather than get into broader discussion first. The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, as I said in answer to that question in the Select Committee yesterday, the police have received the same amount of money. They have been asked to live within their budget like every other ministry and department. That in no way represents a cut, which is a withdrawal of money from the budget.
Point of order, the Honourable
Speaker. Mr Speaker, I had this problem 4 times in Select Committee yesterday. I'm having it again in the House today. Either it does represent a cut in real terms or it doesn't, and I cannot get an answer from that Minister.
Order. Well, it seems to me the remedy is in asking the right question. I think the dispute, the issue being pursued seems to be what the Minister said yesterday. I've got no idea what the Minister said yesterday, but it seems the problem is the Minister is answering in terms of actual dollars, in terms of cuts, and the member asking the question is trying to establish that adjusting for inflation, if there's not a full adjustment for inflation, that represents a cut. Now, there's a debatable matter, and obviously the question has to be very clear if the members be able to pin the Minister down, and must not leave any wriggle room. And so I don't believe I can pull the Minister up yet, because I haven't heard yet a question that leaves no wriggle room in terms of what is actually being asked. It's no use hypothesising about whether things were adjusted for inflation. If the question is asking about cuts, the Minister's answered about cuts. If the member wants to ask whether the budget was inflation adjusted, he should ask that. That's a different question.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, you understand and I understand what the term in real terms meant. There was no room for wriggle room. The Minister is not answering the question. I put it to you.
I didn't hear the member ask a question whether the budget in real terms was the same.
Point of order, I did, Mr Speaker.
Well, if he did, I invite him to repeat his question. I'll listen very carefully.
Mr Speaker, when the police told the committee that inflation this year could be expected to add $24 million in costs to the police and operational funding increases by only $8.892 million, does that not represent a cut of over $15 million in operational funding in real terms?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr Speaker, the difficulty is that it is what's called estimates. So there is an estimate of what inflation might be, and in the real world you have to wait and see what happens.
Point of order, the Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table a number of documents. The first document is a transcript of yesterday's inquiries of the Minister about cuts in real terms.
Order. Can I just check, was this was in public?
Yes, it was in public,
available
sir.
to members then, so we don't table that.
This is a This is a partial transcript. I can table, if you like, the whole CD-ROM of the entire transcript.
All members have access to that material, so that we don't...
No, they haven't, Mr Speaker. Nobody has access to that.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I beg your pardon. The business has not been reported yet. Leave us sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is objection.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Philgoff.
Mr Speaker, I seek the leave of the House to table answers to questions 150 and 155 to the Law and Order Committee vote, please, 2012-13, where the police indicate quite clearly that the extra costs may represent $24 million, and that's in response to a second question that says, was there an increase or decrease in real level of funding?
Leave us sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is objection.
Okay. Mr Speaker, point of order.
Point of order, the Honourable Philgoff.
I seek the leave of the House to table a document from the Office of the Auditor-General briefing, just one clause that backs up the figure of $8.892 million being the increase that the police get when their costs have gone up by $24 million.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection? There is objection. Order. 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 That kind of an objection is not appropriate. Chris Farford.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker. Do personnel costs equate to 71% of the current total expenditure budgeted in 2012-13 for police?
The Honourable
I'm sorry, Mr Speaker, I didn't hear the
I'd
beginning
ask the
of
member
that
please
question.
repeat the question. It's important.
Supplementary question. Do personnel costs equate to 71% of the current total expenditure budgeted in 2012-13 for police?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, I understand that's correct.
Order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Chris Farford.
Mr Speaker, this is a question that I put to the Minister in Select Committee yesterday, and she refused, and I was actually prevented from asking it.
Order. 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 The member resume his seat. This is question time today. The member asked a question, the Minister answered it. There is no point of order I can see available. The member may ask further supplementary.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I'm just wondering what kind of remedy I have when I'm forced.
Order. 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 It's very simple. This is question time. And the member can ask further questions that focus in on what the Minister said yesterday. There's nothing wrong with that. But the member doesn't take the time of the House with points of order when his question was answered perfectly appropriately. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, you could possibly have added the advice to the member that if he had received an incorrect answer with regard to the confidentiality of the information yesterday at the Select Committee, he should complain now about a breach of privilege.
He should not. The Shadow Leader of the House has been in this place darn near as long as I have, and he knows that those sort of issues are not raised by way of point of order in this House. And he should know that. The Chris Farfoy, supplementary question.
Given the fiscal pressures police face, can she guarantee that there will not be a cut in frontline police staffing and the closure of police stations?
The Honourable Tolley.
Mr Speaker, those questions were answered quite clearly to the member yesterday. The Commissioner has made it very clear that there are no plans to close any police stations.
The Honourable Philgoff.
When the police cut staff and services because they need to find savings because of the rising costs that they face, will she accept responsibility for that because she failed to stand up for a portfolio and at least get compensation for rising costs, or will she blame the police saying it's operational responsibility?
The Honourable Tolley.
Quite the contrary, Mr Speaker, as I explained yesterday in the Select Committee. The police are working through the policing excellence in a number of different ways, and they are using 21st century technology, which has meant that much of the entry work and the book work is able to be done out while on the streets while the police are still out in the community without having to come back to police stations and fill in forms and use carbon paper. And that means that has freed up a lot of the jobs, the backroom office, that used to be done.
Point of order, the Honourable Philgoff.
Mr Speaker, if you recall my question, it was, will she accept responsibility?
No, order. the member's question was so loaded with his views on matters that it did not comply with standing orders, and therefore he cannot expect me to ask the minister to comply any more than he did in asking his question. Question number 11, Nikki Wagner.
Mr. Speaker, to the Minister of Courts, what recent announcements has he made?